Whew, just like the beginning clip. Just straight up, no more. Okay, let's. Welcome back to the Big Game Podcast. In today's video, we're going to be reacting to this viral clip of a volleyball coach interacting with some of her players' parents. It's a pretty spicy clip, and I'm excited to break it down and react to it. Let's get into it. Straight out the gate, telling them no more. Okay, it says something. This is a very important topic in youth sports. Okay. And sometimes that isn't addressed. I missed that part. Okay, coach is reacting. First off, let me just comment on her demeanor. She looked like she don't play. She looked like she does not take any mess. Not from coaches, not from players, not from parents. I mean, if you look at how she's sitting, she is with that 1,000-yard stare looking at these parents cutting up on the sideline. I can't really hear them, but apparently they're either talking to their kids or they're yelling at their kids or someone else's kids. I mean, that happens quite a bit. And she's just observing right now. So that's, you know, it's pretty typical. That's what happens at pretty much any sport. All right, let's keep it going. Oh, she's done now. Uh-oh. Camera guy has to get readjusted. She's walking on over fast. Okay, hands behind the back. Whew, just like the beginning clip. Just straight up, no more. Okay, let's pause right there. Let's pause right there and let's break that down, because that's a very, very interesting interaction. She comes up, stays quiet for a second, and immediately goes into no more. No more. You don't talk to him. Okay, now, my question is, does she know this this parent? Does she have a relationship with this person? Have they been briefed on, you know, parent guidelines, you know, in terms of, you know, support during the games? I don't know. I don't know any of this. Apparently, it seems like she does know this parent to the point to where she can go up and say no more. Now, let me tell you, this is not going to fly in a lot of different areas in terms of just like parents just shutting up and saying no more and talking to them like a kid. I'm not saying it's the wrong thing to do, but I'm just saying she's coming in hot. And unless you've already prepped your parents and talked to your parents and they're violating the guidelines, this may not work. In fact, I remember when I was directing a couple of different sports, specifically basketball, we would give everyone, all the parents, a parent and player orientation when we went over SOPs, best practices, you know, expectations, and we informed parents, hey, we got to stay not quiet on the sideline, but we don't want you talking and coaching up your kids, because that's what we're here to do. If you want to coach, come step on the sideline with us, and then you can coach. Obviously, you got to be a good coach. But we sometimes had people come from outside of that circuit, outside of our parents that were briefed, and they kind of like just started, you know, going off on the kids, not in a negative way all the time. Sometimes it was negative, but they would start coaching them up on the sideline. You need to do this, you need to cut, you need to do that. And that's not their job. And it really makes it a difficult decision for the kiddo, because now they're listening to mom and dad, they're listening to coach, two different, you know, points that are being made a lot of the times by both parties. And now it's a very difficult situation. It doesn't help anybody. So she's got the right idea. Look, you shouldn't be talking to your kids and coaching your kids up on the sideline. If you want to step up in that arena, become a coach, right? That's going to make the flow of the game and the kids' interaction and experience 10 times better. Let them hear from one source, not 10 other sources, okay? So, but she goes up to this person and she's like, no more, no more, no more. Dang, she's coming in hot. There's been circumstances where we've been like, hey man, you got to pump the brakes. And we've had, you know, like sparring sessions, verbal sparring sessions, not actual sparring sessions, verbal sparring sessions with parents. Like if I had talked to my parents in that regard, first of all, that's kind of embarrassing. That's kind of embarrassing for the parent that's doing that. You could argue that they're embarrassing their kid, they're embarrassing the team, they're embarrassing that by their actions. But, you know, telling them no more and speaking in that way, whew, that's tough. I don't know if I would do that. I don't know if I would do that because, you know, you might get swung on. But hey, apparently she knows this parent. Apparently maybe they have a relationship in terms of like the parent-coach relationship. And that's what she feels comfortable doing. And so, you know, apparently that stopped. Maybe they had a conversation after the tournament, after the game or whatever, and said, hey, look, I'm sorry. You just, you know, we have guidelines. You ain't supposed to be talking to our players like that. And maybe it all worked out. Hopefully it did. Or maybe the kid left. Maybe the parent was so offended she, you know, took her kid out the program, or he took his kid out the program, whoever it was, and they bounced. They went to another program. You know, I think if you can try and find a happy balance of trying to not embarrass, but also being stern with your parents, especially if there are violations, I think that's super helpful. Let's finish up the rest of the video. Let's talk about that in a second. All right, so what does it say right here? In youth sports, the role of parents is to support, not to add pressure. Kids already, play button's kind of blocking this, juggle with nerves of competition, instruction of their coaches, and their natural ups and downs. Yep, 100% true, 100% true. Everything that she's saying in this and posting with her captions, 100% true. 100% true. I just don't know if I would have approached it that same way. You know, I've had some roughnecks that have been on my team in terms of parents. You know, if we have a working relationship in terms of I'm coaching your kids, you're paying me a lot of money to coach your kids. You know, hey, I'm gonna be like, hey, Doug, can I borrow you for a second? Hey, man, can you not do that right now? You know, that's the way I probably would have approached it. I wouldn't have been, hey, no more. Man, I might get swung on. I'm not trying to do all that. So, you know, there's a mutual respect. And if I did my job beforehand, and we'll talk about this in terms of SOPs for your program, then we're gonna see less of that. We're gonna see it maybe from people who are coming outside of our sphere, right, of our program. There maybe some, you know, relatives, some friends, all that stuff, but that's the parent's job to then inform them and educate them so that they don't go acting a fool when the game is going on. So, all right, let's do this. Let's finish the rest of this, see if there's any more captions. And here's one more. When parents cheer with encouragement, it creates an environment where young athletes can thrive, enjoy the sport, and build confidence. 100%. 100% agree. I don't want it to come off as like I'm bashing her. I'm just saying I would have chosen a different approach. But again, it depends on the relationship that she has with these parents or parent that she's talking to, and if she knows them, if they've been already prepped and maybe they're a repeat violator. We'll talk about that if we do have repeat violators for the code of conduct. But when players yell at their kids from the sidelines, it only adds stress and takes the joy out of playing. 100% agree. 100% agree. Let's see, anything else on this? Man, she went right back to it. She don't play. I would not want to cross her on the sideline. So let's see, we got one more thing. The best things that parents can do is be their child's biggest fan, cheer loudly, love unconditionally, and let the coaching come from the coach. Yes, absolutely. That's the best thing that you can do right there in that situation. And it goes to show you that there is something broken in youth sports where we don't understand our roles, or maybe they're not clearly outlined, but we'll get into that. We're going to talk a lot about that on this channel. So let's finish up. All right, we're cheering for the kids. Love it. Right back to business. Love it. Okay, let's get into it. Okay, so that was a spicy interaction for sure. Spicy interaction. Again, I don't know if I would have handled it that way, but she did. Let's come away with some takeaways. So let's talk about some SOPs. Now, my background, I was athletic director for a park, for LA County Parks and Rec, ran a whole bunch of sports, baseball, soccer, basketball, flag football, lacrosse, all those sports, ran them all, had tons of parent interactions, ran my own league, ran my own club, all that stuff. And so I've done some things very well, and I've done things some not very well. And so I want to give you a couple of tips on how you can avoid this situation. Not all situations can be avoided. There's going to be some things that just pop up that you just can't, you got to just deal with it, work through the rough patches. Okay, so let's get into the tips. Okay, so number one is protocols, SOPs for players, parents, and coaches. Now, what's a SOP? A standard operating procedure, or a protocol. You can call them best practices, guidelines, whatever you want to call them. And typically in these protocols / SOPs, you're going over what the expectations are, how you are to conduct yourself, how the players are supposed to conduct themselves, how the coaches are supposed to conduct themselves. We're going to set a tone for the program. This is culture building, and it's so important. If you don't build a good culture early on for your youth sports program, whether that's training, club, rec, whatever it is, you may run awry of some really big challenges later on. And I've seen this time after time after time. I mean, to the point that leagues, coaches, peoples, they get sued because they didn't have proper protocols or SOPs in place, or maybe they just didn't follow them to the letter. So it's really important to set these things up so that you can provide really good guide rails for everyone. It keeps us all pretty safe, and things can be amended, things can be changed, but we have to have really good protocols, SOPs, for parents, players, and coaches. Now, the way in which we deliver them, I like to start with a parent, player, coach orientation at the very beginning of the season, remind them towards the middle of the season, and encourage good behavior all throughout the season, all the way to the end. If we have a banquet, if we have a closing ceremony, kind of calling those things back into place, saying, hey, Tim, John, Susie, Sally, y'all did great. Y'all supported us, supported your kids, blah, 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 blah. And if these challenges come awry, we'll talk about that in a second, these guide rails are there to refer back to. We have to have rules, or else it's pure chaos. It's anarchy. It's Gotham City. It's the Joker taking over. And so if we don't have good SOPs and guidelines, people kind of tend to do their own thing. So, all right. Now, we talked about culture. Now let's talk about contracts and expectations. This kind of ties into your SOP. What I used to have to do, what I had my parents and players and coaches do, is sign a little contract. Now, if they violate the contract, no one's getting sued or anything like that in that sense, or fired or anything like that. Well, maybe not fired, but maybe removed from the program if they violated the core tenets of the contract. And this was also, part of the expectations for parents, players, and coaches. But basically, the contract was there to say, look, I recognize, hey, I'm going to support my kid. I'm not going to talk trash against the coach. I'm not going to, bring alcohol. That's a thing. Bringing alcohol to a youth game. It's kind of crazy, dog, because now you take a couple of zips and all of a sudden you buzzed and you treat it like a actual professional game, calling people out their name. It's crazy. I've seen it happen. It gets wild. But, this contract is there, making sure everybody understands it, tie back to it later on during the middle of the season, encourage good behavior. That is the stuff that's going to help your program thrive, okay? That goes along with your expectations as well. So if you don't have those things as part of your program, that's a huge thing. That's like step number one. We gotta have good protocols, SOPs. This is building your positive culture for your program, laying out the expectations so that everybody knows, what they're accountable for. All right, let's go on to the next one. So here's a big thing. Did you clearly go over how parents are to observe and interact during their child's game? Now, this right here seems like the parent either didn't know what her responsibility was or his responsibility. I don't know if it was him or her. But it shows that it doesn't seem like she knew what her responsibility was, what her role was. And maybe she forgot it, maybe she just completely ignored it. But this is the type of stuff that happens when we clearly don't go over what the expectations are on how to observe and interact with their child during the game. Now, look, that's your child, okay? You can talk to them whenever you want, you can do all that, but you might not be able to do that with my program. If that's what you want to do and you want to ignore, my counsel, our standards, our SOPs, go find another program. This is not the program for you. And if you don't like that, I'm sorry, that's just the way it goes. I mean, just imagine this scenario, okay? You're working a job, you have your boss, but then you have your coworker right here. Your boss gives you orders, you're supposed to be listening to your boss, but then now your coworker starts chiming in, giving you feedback and telling you all this. And so now it's creating confusion. No, you got to listen to the boss. You ain't listening to the coworker. That's what we're here to do. You can listen to the coworker later on. I don't know if that's the best example, but that's something that happens all the time, right? The kids are trying to listen to the coach, right? Coach is telling them, whether it's good instruction or bad instruction, this is what you signed up for. You should know whether or not this is a good coach. You should do your homework. You should observe them before you enroll your child. That's another topic for another day, but apparently something went horribly wrong, and now this parent is screaming at their kid, giving them instructions, telling them what to do, telling them, hey, try harder, this, that, the other. Nah, that's not the best outcome for that kiddo, because now they're thinking about what you say, they're thinking about what coach is saying, and then also they're kind of like losing out on what they're thinking about the game. They have to process so many things. So I think the best scenario for that kiddo and for that family and for that program is for them to focus on the coach's instruction and then the game. That's it. Overloading them with too much information, I don't think is super helpful. Just my opinion. I've seen it hundreds and hundreds of times. Anyways, all right. Now, once we got through that stage, everybody understands their role. It's not good enough to just have this parent, player, coach orientation talking about SOPs, culture, standards at the beginning of the season. Because guess what? If the season is a very long season, 8, 9 weeks, 10 weeks, whatever, people forget. People need to be reminded. I remember a mentor of mine said, it's not that you need to be taught, it's that you need to be reminded. And those words are so true. We need to remind them, not in the sense like, hey, remember, you got to do this, that, the other. No, sometimes actually yes, but remind them with praise. I think that's a really positive vehicle to show, hey, John did a great job supporting not just his kid, but all the kids in the program. He's not yelling, I appreciate that, yada, 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 right? Or he encouraged other parents, or the people that he's bringing along with him to understand our culture, our rules, all that stuff. And so John did a very good job. So that's what we want to do, because now it reinforces that beginning meeting orientation, and it helps people to remember what their jobs are to do during the season. And that's the culture we want to build. And again, it leads to better, outcomes for everybody in there, okay? So we want to reinforce good parent behavior more than once a season, absolutely. And we also want to get other teams and coaches involved if you can. So let me give you an example. I ran a girls lacrosse league for about 3 years, 3 seasons, okay? Or actually about 6 seasons, because we did an off season, fall season and a spring season. Lacrosse is typically in the spring. And I didn't have one negative parent interaction in all 3 of those seasons. Now, that's 3 years worth of interacting with parents and players and other coaches. Now, let me provide the context for the program. I had my core programs that I've built up, and then I invited programs from, different regions to come and join our league. And we didn't have any bad, negative parent interactions, no fights, no cursing the kid out, well, at least not in front of us, none of that stuff. And we did that for 3 years. And I think the reason why we had such a positive time, now let me back up. The kids had problems, but that's easy to deal with, a lot of the times. Oh, well, I don't like what she did, I don't like what he did, he pushed me, blah, blah. Okay, let's teach sportsmanship, let's build character. Good. But I think the reason why we were successful was because I made it a big, big point at the inception of the league. It was a newer league, right? Only 3 seasons, to reinforce positive behavior from parents, players, and coaches. And also for the other programs joining us, they had to sign these contracts too, and they had to police their own. So if I saw something flaring up on the sideline, because I was the director, not the coach, I would say, hey man, can you maybe talk to, so-and-so, I seen something, maybe, encourage your parents, remind them of the contract that they signed, yada, yada, yada. And those things would be nipped in the butt. If they, started to pop up, like I said, we didn't really have any issues throughout the 3 years that I can remember. And what did that lead to? Man, it led to less stress. Less stress for me, less stress for the programs, less stress for them. Now, if they had problems with their parents, in their own program, that's one thing. But for me and mine, we had a clear system of how to communicate. You had a problem with one of the coaches? All right, write it down, let's communicate, incident report, yada, yada, yada. We had, systems in place to make sure that if there was anything that was challenging or something came up, this is how we handle it. And that keeps our league safe, that keeps our league not stress-free, but mitigates the stress completely, okay? Now, let's talk about this. What if we have a parent bystander, attendee, not follow the rules, not follow the guidelines, not follow the SOPs. What do we do then? Okay, there's a system in which it's a very simple system. It's basically, 2 strikes, or like not 2 strikes, but you're going to issue a couple of warnings depending on the severity of the infraction. I remember there's some parents that, would just go over the top. They get so mad and frustrated at our junior officials. Not in my league per se, I'm sorry, let me back up. In other leagues that I've worked in or managed or whatever, maybe we didn't do the best job of culture building, blah, blah, blah. And they would yell at these 12-year-old officials. And that's a big no-no. And so we would approach them after and be like, hey, you can't be yelling at our officials like that. Plus, they're 12. They're junior officials. They're babies. They don't even know what they're doing. Why are you yelling at these little kids? And, well, I don't know. This goes to, to show how the youth sports culture is kind of broken, and we don't do a great job of teaching and educating our parents enough. There's this weird, spirit of, I don't even want to use spirit, but just this weird energy where you're treating kids' games like professional games. You're heckling them, you're yelling. I mean, it's crazy stuff. I mean, are they competing for contracts? Maybe nowadays they are, but most of the time they're not. This is 12U basketball at your local park. You're paying $85. It ain't that serious. Come on, dog. Anyways, so we issue a couple of warnings, right? Depending on the severity of the infraction. And, hopefully after talking to them, making sure that we're writing these things down to keep a good track record, if it does happen again, now we get to final actions. Okay, final actions, what do? We might have to suspend the parent from the games. Oh, that's not fun, but it has to be done if bad behavior continues. Well, we also might have to suspend the kids from the games too, the whole family. Look, if your kid is popping off and you're popping off, hey man, you're violating our code of conduct, right? SOPs, contracts, violation. We gave you warnings, you're not obeying the warnings, you gotta go. You're suspended for a couple of games. And then, if it's really bad, maybe some fighting, whatever it is, you got to release the family from the program, okay? You're not going to get your money back. There's no refunds for this. You understood the assignment, as the kids say, and you violated those things. And so that's the very last step. Make sure you document everything. If you are coming from like a park system or from any kind of like government system where you provide youth sports recreation, you should already have a system in play on how you keep track records and all that good stuff. But if you're an independent program director, you need to know these things. And so releasing them from the program is not fun. It kind of sucks. I had this situation happen once in where I had a parent pop off at a lacrosse game so bad, berating me, berating my coaches, berating everybody. The kid was super sweet, and we just had to let him go. It got to the point of no return where, I was willing to listen to the frustration because, we listen to the frustration sometimes. Sometimes it's best to just let them vent. You can take it, you're strong, and then go from there. But it got to the point where name calling and finger pointing and almost to the point of physical violence. And I'm like, no. I'm sorry. You got to go. No refund. You violate the rules. You got to go. And so it's unfortunate when those situations happen, but what you also want to consider doing is having a support system behind you so that you're not just an individual taking care of business that way. Making sure that you have a board, making sure that you have, other coaches that are, watching the situation, evaluating, taking notes, video, whatever it is, so that you can have a proven track record so you can protect yourself later on too. Just in case anything does happen in terms of like lawsuits or whatever. I've seen that happen a couple of times. So very important. It sucks, but those are the final actions that you would take. Now, if they respond to the warnings and they never do it again, hey man, praise that. You don't need to put it out in public, but be like, hey man, I've seen your progression. I've seen your growth through the season. I appreciate you listening to the words. We're just trying to make the best environment for your kid to be the best that they can be, and that we can have a successful season doing these things. And man, I'm telling you, those parents will become your biggest supporters because they see that you're trying to make this the best sports culture for their kiddos. And so that's what they really appreciate. All right, so we got our final releases. We got our keeping receipts, all that stuff. We talked a little bit about liability and risk, right? And now, if everything goes well, hopefully all this bad behavior stops. Final words is, if you don't set up the right culture early on, you're going to kind of suffer the consequences early. Or if you're inheriting a bad culture, that takes a little bit more work to sharpen up, but you got to have a come to Jesus meeting and talk to everybody and get everybody on board in terms of like coaches, staff, whatever, depending on where you're coming from. Like if you operate a club, you can kind of like manage that. But if you're coming into like a recreation facility that has years and years of recreation going on, it's a little bit harder to manage because people are already set in their ways, coaches are already set in their ways, but you kind of got to clean shop sometimes, you know what I mean? So anyways, if you found that helpful, consider subscribing. Leave a comment. Have you experienced anything like this where parents are popping off and you had to intervene or have a come to Jesus moment during the game or after the game? So I want to know. All right, guys, to the next episode. I'll see you soon.